How General Colin Powell's 13 rules can defeat corruption and greed. Throughout history, corruption and greed have proven to be silent assassins of nations. They rarely roar at first. They whisper. They begin in shadows, a bribe tucked in a sleeve, a promise exchanged behind closed doors. A leader who looks away from dishonesty because it seems too small to matter. Yet over time, what is tolerated in secret grows into the very sickness that weakens governments, destroys empires, and makes people lose faith in leadership itself. From the senators of Rome who sold their honor for coins to monarchs who taxed their people into despair, to modern states where leaders siphon billions while citizens starve, corruption and greed have destroyed more civilizations than foreign armies ever could. The erosion of integrity is not sudden, it is gradual like rot in a great tree. By the time it topples, the decay has long been at work. General Colin Powell, a soldier, statesman, and one of the most respected military leaders of the United States, left behind not just a record of service, but a legacy of wisdom. His 13 rules of leadership are not abstract principles. They are practical, lived truths, forged in the battlefield and tested in the corridors of power. Today, these rules can serve as weapons in the fight against corruption and greed. If applied with courage, they can help restore nations to integrity, accountability, and trust. First rule: it ain't as bad as you think. It will look better in the morning. Corrupt leaders often justify their greed by claiming it is the only way to survive crises. They hoard wealth, believing that plunder is necessary for stability. Yet history disproves this fear. George Washington, while leading a starving army at Valley Forge, never allowed his men to steal from the farmers who supported the revolution. He endured hunger rather than sacrifice honor. His conviction was that tomorrow's dawn would shine brighter if the night was endured with integrity. General Colin Luther Powell reminds us that optimism rooted in truth makes corruption unnecessary. Integrity sees beyond fear. Greed sees only the immediate gain. Second rule: get mad, then get over it. Many leaders turn to corruption because of bitterness. They carry anger from years of poverty or exclusion and use power as revenge. Now it is my turn to take. But vengeance disguised as leadership breeds only more injustice. Abraham Lincoln, who rose from poverty and endured constant mockery, could have used power for self-enrichment. Instead, he embodied responsibility. He famously said, "Nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, give him power." Lincoln's power was not in greed, but in forgiveness. Powell's wisdom teaches us that leaders may feel anger, but true leadership rises above it and does not let resentment feed corruption. Third rule: avoid having your ego so close to your position that when your position falls, your ego goes with it. Greedy leaders cling to office as though it were their very identity, using corruption to secure their status. But history honors humility, not arrogance. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome and commander of legions, reminded himself daily in meditations, "Remember, you are but a man." He knew that titles fade, but integrity endures. George Washington stepped down after 2 terms, refusing kingship when it was offered, proving that ego does not define legacy, character does. General Colin Luther Powell's rule calls leaders to detach their worth from their position, for ego is the seedbed of corruption. Fourth rule: it can be done. Perhaps the greatest lie corruption spreads is that it is inevitable, that everyone is doing it. General Colin Luther Powell, a man who broke barriers as the first African-American U.S. Secretary of State, shattered impossibilities throughout his career. In the same spirit, Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore proved that rooting out corruption is not utopian. He declared he would prosecute even his own family if they were guilty. Under his leadership, Singapore transformed from a struggling colony into one of the least corrupt nations on earth. Powell's reminder that it can be done calls leaders to refuse excuses. Corruption can be uprooted. It requires courage and will. Fifth rule: be careful what you choose. You may get it. Leaders who choose corruption may believe they are securing wealth, but they inherit ruin. Thomas Jefferson warned, "Honesty is the first chapter in the Book of Wisdom. Corruption may buy temporary luxury, but it sells the future." Nations that choose bribery over truth find themselves enslaved to cycles of poverty and distrust. Leaders who choose integrity inherit the enduring trust of their people. Powell's rule is a reminder that every choice has consequences, and greed always writes a bitter legacy. Sixth rule: don't let adverse facts stand in the way of a good decision. Greedy leaders often excuse corruption by pointing to facts. The system is broken, the economy is collapsing, we have no choice but to bend the rules. Yet history proves that courage is stronger than circumstance. Winston Churchill, in the darkest days of 1940, refused to surrender to Hitler, even when all facts suggested Britain would fall. He said, "You cannot reason with a tiger when your head is in its mouth." The facts did not deter his decision for resistance. General Colin Luther Powell's rule teaches leaders that excuses rooted in fear are dangerous. Integrity must prevail even when conditions seem impossible. Seventh rule: you can't make someone else's choices. You shouldn't let someone else make yours. Corruption thrives when leaders bow to the pressures of patrons, peers, or political machines. Yet Gandhi stood against an empire, insisting, "Even if you are a minority of one, the truth is the truth." His refusal to let others dictate dishonor set India free. General Colin Luther Powell's seventh rule is a call to moral independence. Leaders cannot allow corruption to be forced upon them by others, nor can they excuse their choices as obedience. Integrity requires courage to stand alone if necessary. Eighth rule: check small things. Rome did not collapse from one great act of corruption, but from countless small compromises. Bribes and indulgences once tolerated became the culture of governance. The Roman historian Sallust warned, "Greed destroys honor, integrity, and all that is good." Powell's wisdom insists that leadership must begin with small things: a transparent budget, an honest signature, a promise kept. When leaders discipline themselves in details, corruption has no place to grow. Ninth rule: share credit. Greed hoards not only money, but also honor. Corrupt leaders cling to achievements as if they alone built them. Yet Nelson Mandela shattered this illusion by lifting others. He once said, "Lead from the back and let others believe they are in front." By sharing credit, he broke the chains of ego and built unity in a divided nation. General Colin Luther Powell's ninth rule reminds us that generosity with recognition dismantles the selfishness where corruption thrives. 10th rule: remain calm, be kind. Greed thrives in panic. Leaders convinced that resources are scarce scramble to hoard wealth, forgetting the people. But Gandhi declared, "There is sufficiency in the world for man's need, but not for man's greed." Powell's 10th rule tells us that calmness produces clarity, while kindness transforms leadership into stewardship. A calm and kind leader sees resources as tools for service, not trophies for personal enrichment. 11th rule: have a vision, be demanding. Corruption narrows vision until a leader sees only self-interest. Greed blinds leaders to the future, binding them to short-term gain. Yet Martin Luther King Jr. lifted his nation with a vision larger than himself. "I have a dream," he declared, and in that vision he demanded justice for millions. General Colin Luther Powell's 11th rule reminds leaders that vision beyond self is the antidote to greed. Demanding integrity is not cruelty, it is the lifeline of leadership. 12th rule: don't take counsel of your fears or naysayers. Fear often drives corruption. Leaders fear losing power, fear public anger, fear failure, so they choose greed to secure themselves. But Mandela, after 27 years in prison, walked free without revenge. He silenced fear and chose reconciliation. General Colin Luther Powell's 12th rule warns leaders to resist fear, for fear sustains corruption even more than greed. Integrity requires courage to silence the whispers of naysayers and stand boldly in truth. 13th rule: perpetual optimism is a force multiplier. Finally, General Colin Luther Powell leaves us with optimism. Leaders who believe integrity is impossible will never fight for it. But optimism multiplies courage. Churchill declared, "The empires of the future are the empires of the mind." Optimism that a nation can be free of corruption ignites movements, fuels reforms, and inspires citizens to demand accountability. Where fear spreads corruption, optimism multiplies the power of integrity. History is clear. Corruption devours, greed blinds, but integrity preserves. From Washington's endurance, Lincoln's restraint, Gandhi's truth, Mandela's generosity, to Churchill's courage, the great leaders of history prove that honor outlasts gold. General Colin Luther Powell's 13 rules are not suggestions for comfort. They are weapons for survival. Nations that embrace them can uproot corruption, dismantle greed, and rise into integrity. Let today's leaders hear this truth. Riches may dazzle, titles may impress, but honor alone writes your name into history. Wealth fades, empires collapse, but integrity endures. And when corruption whispers, Powell's wisdom shouts, "It can be done." Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss more powerful lessons. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next video.